I think that's the thing. I get people sometimes do get surprised if I find a sports movie interesting or a sports video game. Because they're like, you don't like sport. It's like, yeah, but you don't need to appreciate these things.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll play FIFA, the soccer game, you know. People are like, you don't like football? No. I play Call of Duty, but I don't like shooting people in the face.
Hey,
Well,
don't
not
knock
too
it until you tried it, John. I mean, come on.
I'm
Although-
not, what's his face? Oh, I've forgotten. I was going to compare that to someone. The producer that did the Ramones album, and he threatened them with a gun.
Oh, Phil
Oh,
Spector.
Phil Spector.
Spector! Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Phil Spector.
You can see Al Pacino play Phil Spector as Al Pacino in that Al Pacino Phil Spector movie that came out a couple of years back.
I just remember watching a Ramones DVD I've got, and they were basically just saying, yeah, he kind of held us hostage and was waving a gun around.
It's an
absolute lunatic, that guy.
It is a perfect storm of bad ideas that went into that whole thing. We're like, okay, we've got this band that can't hold still for 10 minutes. And we're going to pair them with this guy who makes people do 50 takes on a single guitar note. What could go wrong?
I'll tell you what, though.
They're also all mentally disturbed. All of them.
I think I'm in the minority, but I really liked the outcome. I liked the album. Everyone seems to think like, oh, no, don't listen to that.
Okay, so I was in prep for this. I was trying to make Ramones Batman connections, of which there are very few.
Well, them doing the Batman theme tune, I guess, at that one time.
Yeah, they did a Spider-Man theme, but I'm like, okay. But you just hit on one with that, where a lot of the flack, I feel, that is thrown at End of the Century, which is that album he's talking about, is that doesn't sound like the Ramones.
It's true. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the flack that Batman Forever and even any of the 90s movies get is that's not what Batman would do. and I guess a case could be made for that in a way where, yeah, it is different from something else earlier, but it doesn't actually have to be just like the source material.
No, exactly.
You don't have to make Rocket to Russia every single freaking time.
Well, even more so with a band, yeah, because okay, this new album, let's put us back in that era. This new album comes out. Oh, it doesn't sound like the previous one. Well, listen to the previous ones. You've got like 5,000 Ramones albums.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like there's a dearth of content for you.
No, and I feel the same thing with the Batman movies, especially like of these era, that weird thing that gets thrown at them. Like, for me personally, my favorite is probably the animated series, but I like that I have the option to then watch live action actors do stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, can't you separate the two? I don't understand why people can't do that. It's that whole, I'm a very like, most of my I should have told you this ahead of time. Most of my like guest appearances on podcasts are to denounce continuity. I kind of feel like, especially now, continuity becomes a hindrance as opposed to something helpful.
Yes.
So it's something that people can like go down the list and say, well, he'd do this, he'd do this, he'd do. Oh, you miss points for that because he wouldn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, but we're making a movie here, guys. We're telling a story, and this is what the movie is. And I don't think anybody would say that Batman Forever is some sort of cinematic masterpiece, but it does like click a lot of boxes for like fun Batman things, which is really what I want over like, yeah, but in issue 76, he did, come on.
We deliberately try and avoid doing that on the show. We were worried about that. We were like, we're going to get those people messaging us saying, you're stupid. You don't know anything.
But I don't know. It's weird how like now those weird nitpicky voices are amplified by the internet. Yeah. And I know they probably existed back in the day, but to your point, John, it was like, look, if you want Frank Miller's Batman, it literally exists on your nightstand.
Yeah, go get it.
You've got it. You've got it. And there's something to the point that even like people will say like, I want a dark take on the Riddler. And like, that's like saying I want a healthy ice cream. Like this like in its DNA, it's kind of gonna be at least a little goofy.
Yeah.
Even Batman himself is like, even in The Dark Knight, There's the scene when they're on the rooftop where like Harvey Dent has flashed the bat signal and Batman shows up and then Gordon's there. And it just kind of cracks me up every time because I'm like, boy, they're taking this so seriously. And there's a guy with a cape standing right next to him. It just looks It just looks funny. And I just think people get really hung up on their personal suspension of disbelief when it's like, look, guys, it's not real. So you can kind of do anything.
I think even like Christian Bale said when they were shooting that interrogation scene with like him and Heath Ledger like, in The Dark Knight, like on set they were cracking up the whole time because they're just sitting like when all the you see the lighting crew and like the sound guys there and stuff, and you're sitting there as a guy like in smeared pancake makeup and you're wearing a really ridiculous bat suit. You're just gonna be like, this is a very silly situation where we find ourselves in, but we're having to take this dead seriously at the same time.
It really is, and I'm kind of, and sometimes I struggle with it, but I feel like people would be at least happier if they could just acknowledge that it was like, look, you know, James Bond looked like Roger Moore for a while, and he looked like Sean Connery for a while. It doesn't matter if they're the same person. It's a story. Just take a story.
That's an excellent example of people like being okay with that concept. So why can't like James Bond? He changes appearance, he changes mannerisms, he changes his character quite a lot, and nobody seems to care or question it. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's James Bond. That's what he does." Like, why can't you just accept that with other things?
I don't know. I don't know. And I feel like in a way, there's like a fun, what may be fun. There's a fun angle going out there of the idea that James Bond is just a name and that it changes agents.
I like that.
So, you know, I like it, but at the same time, I'm almost scared of it because then it's going to just raise these questions to be like, well, if he was different, then, you know, wouldn't he? I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah, you get people analyzing. I was going to say you get people over-analyzing it, and we're talking about a movie minute by minute. But people take it too seriously. They can't just have fun.
I don't know.
Again, because I can never really speak to Bond too much because I'm just not a Bond fan. But in terms of that continuity, though, what really messes me about with it now is all the Blofeld Spector stuff. Because like he started off as a very sinister villain, then he got killed by Roger Moore by picking him up in a helicopter and throwing him down a power plant chimney or something like that. And then it's like you go like 20 years, 30 years passes. There's a bit in Skyfall where it seems to indicate that Daniel Craig's Bond is the same Bond who was in Goldfinger because he's talking about the Aston Martin and stuff. So you're like, oh, it is continuity. And then friggin' Christoph Waltz shows up and he's Blofeld again. But it's as if the first time you've ever heard of this character. And it's like, what is this continuity then? Like, what is happening? Like, do you know what's happening? Does anybody know what it's just like, it's just whatever. When it's a different guy, it's a different universe entirely, except Judi Dench is sometimes the one consistent thing. It's all the goddamn.
So the other thing I'll always bring up with If You Give Me Enough Time is the Fistful of Dollars trilogy.
Oh yeah.
It's one of my favorite, and it became one of my favorite trilogies. And part of the reason why I love it is there's like Clint Eastwood basically plays the same character, but he's technically not. And
yeah, it's not really a trilogy in a way.
Lee Van Cleef is a good guy in one, and then he's literally called the bad in another. Yeah. And it kind of fits thematically, and it's neat that it's 3 movies, and it does kind of reference, like in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, it references back, like Eastwood starts without the rap, the serape, but then eventually gets it, and you're supposed to be like, oh my God, there he is. But
I think a lot of people interpret that as being that it's a prequel then. Because like, oh, that's him getting this stuff. And then at the end, he rides off and then A Fistful of Dollars is going to begin.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's just like, well, did he never, when a few dollars more comes up, is he like, oh, I know a guy who looks a lot, I killed a guy like 2 years ago who looks exactly like this one.
But see, that's what I'm getting to is that rationale is totally against the point. The point is, I feel, is like, in this movie, this is what's happening. And then in this other movie, this is what's happening. And you only get tripped up if you try to make sense of it beyond what the movie is telling you. If you take the movie for what it is and accept it, you can enjoy that. And then you can look back and see trends, but you don't necessarily have to say like, well, you know, if he went here, then that means this really exists. And it's a weird thing that some people do to try to like make things exist in the real world that don't. Like the whole argument of Gotham City being, where it is on the map. I'm like, it's not real, guys. It exists in a place that we can't go to. So stop trying to make a map to say to say it's actually here, and New York exists too. I got pet peeves about it.
I'm looking forward though to next season, just because, again, talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because Eli Wallach played Mr. Freeze.
Oh yeah.
And Eli Wallach's one of my all-time favorite actors, so like I can't wait to be able to just crack out the Eli Wallach impressions.
He's great.
Just for the sake of it. Just like, got an excuse now. He played this guy, so here we go.
Boy, you could almost make an argument that he is the best on like live action Mr. Freeze. Low bar to hit, but you can do it.
I agree.